Contributor and former Bush Cheney senior advisor Robert Traynham, professor of political science and communications at Hiram College, Jason Johnson, and economic and fiscal policy correspondent for the National Journal, Nancy Cook. And with a welcome to all three of you. Jason, I'll reach out to you first this time. What are the chances this president will be remembered as someone who fought for the working classes, even if he can't get any legislative victories because of an unobstructive or rather an obstructive GOP?
Not a chance. I see a lot of high school history books, and the way legacies are determined, it's still going to take a while. I mean, think of Bill Clinton's legacy. It was really Monica Lewinsky in a lot of ways. That's what people remember. They don't remember the great economy he established from the beginning. And I think Barack Obama's legacy is more going to be about his race. It's going to be about cultural issues. I don't think he's going to get that much done on the economy that'll really affect how he's viewed in history.
You know, and I'm going to go to Robert next, but I'm going to say I think people do actually remember about the economy with Bill Clinton, because certainly when you compare it to what was happening in the 90s versus now, you kind of go, well, that was under Clinton watch. That said, Robert, to you, let's listen to part of what the president said to the New York Times.
Racial tensions won't get better, they may get worse, because people will feel as if they've got to compete with some other group to get scraps from a shrinking pie. If the economy is growing, everybody feels invested. Everybody feels as if we're rowing in the same direction.
Okay, so a couple things first to you, Robert. Do you agree with what the president's saying there? And what do you think Republicans feel about what he's saying there overall? Do they understand this idea?
Yeah, I somewhat agree with him, but I also disagree with him. Let me just go back to Bill Clinton for a second. You know, Bill Clinton obviously will be known as with the Monica Lewinsky scandal, but it was the longest and the largest peacetime expansion in our nation's history from an economic standpoint. There was an exploding middle class, and even during that exploding middle class, in a good way, there was still racial tension. Remember, Bill Clinton apologized for slavery. There was the Rodney King verdict in the early 1990s. There was also the Ennis Cosby thing. So race was still very much an issue in the 1990s, and the economy was still growing. So I don't necessarily agree with the president with that, because yes, the economy is important. We need to have strong middle class jobs, but also talking about race is also very important too. So I'm not sure there's a correlation between the two in this regard. Okay,
Nancy, you cover the economy with the National Journal. So is there any appetite in Congress to work with the president to advance his economic agenda and really just to help out the middle class?
I think that there is some will on the part of the senators, particularly a bunch of Senate Republicans that the president and his chief of staff and the Treasury Secretary have been meeting with. And there is some interest among them about getting some sort of budget deal potentially this fall. And the Senate, as you know, passed the fiscal cliff deal first before the House of Representatives did in December. So I think that that's one place that he'll look at. I think the House Republicans just view prompting economic growth in a totally different way than the president has. They really believe in tax cuts and, you know, undoing regulations like Obamacare as a means of unleashing economic growth. And I think it's really a philosophical difference that they're fighting over at this point.
Jason, before we move to our next topic, how much do you think there is a connection between race and the economy?
Oh, there's a huge connection between race and the economy. The fact that African Americans with 2 years of college are still 30% less likely to get callbacks for jobs than whites with only a high school diploma says that good 12 to 15% of our population, more in some major urban areas, are locked out of the economy. So as long as we have that kind of discrimination, which also goes to women, which also goes to Latinos, we're always going to have difficulty with a rising tide that will bring everybody into this active economy.
Okay, we're going to move to our next topic now. Nancy, I'll begin with you. This 1 to 10 topic. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is extremely likely here. What are the chances of a government shutdown as Congress battles over the budget?
Sure. I would put it at about a 5 at this point. I think that we have to see how the last week before recess goes. I think we have to see how representatives and senators, what they hear from their constituents over the August recess. And I also think that it seems unlikely that there will be a government shutdown, given the fact that there will be another fight over the debt ceiling later this fall. So my guess is that at the end of September, Congress passes a continuing resolution to keep the government funded and then saves their ammunition for a bigger budget battle over the debt ceiling, which will happen in October or November.
Okay. Jason, here's your 1 to 10. The New York Times saying that Anthony Weiner's campaign manager has quit. So on this 1 to 10 scale, 10's extremely likely. What is the likelihood Weiner stays in the New York City mayoral race to the end?
I think he's going to stay in. I'm still putting it at 9.
Really?
Look, yeah, because think about it. Look, what else does he have to do right now? I mean, the guy, it's not like he's got a real career after this race. As long as he continues to roll with the punches, he can lose a ton of people. He was never really raising that much money. I think this is his last hurrah. I think Anthony Weiner's going to stay until the bitter, bitter end.
Oof, what a way to go out. Anyway. Okay, Robert, Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell under intense scrutiny right now for accepting all those luxury items and about $120,000 there in loans from a very wealthy Virginia businessman. Now, this is a governor who is potentially seen as having national aspirations. You and I have talked several times about him. So on this 1 to 10 scale, again, 10 extremely likely, what do you think the chances are of McDonnell ascending to national office now?
I would say probably maybe a 4 or 5. It's fairly 50-50. You know, I think he was on the short list to be vice president, but there's too many scandals, if you will, or skeletons in his closet for vice president. President, very unlikely, so I would still give it a 4 or 5.
Okay. Well, we're going to come back with the day's must-reads with the Big Three in just a minute.